We have a few minutes. I'd like to open the floor for comments or for questions. Yes?
Thank you, Becky. By the way, I just lived in Texas for almost 3 years. I left 3 months ago, in West Texas, as a matter of fact.
Yay!
And it's really intriguing to hear you talk about San Angelo, that city in West Texas. I was living in Kenya. And having lived there for almost 3 years, I'm listening to your story and I'm asking myself, has this model you're using in your community been replicated anywhere else, just within the Panhandle Center, the Panhandle area of Texas, or even just Texas itself?
I will say that with this initiative, there is a interfaith peace movement in Abilene.
Okay.
There's also, we've had our 5th annual regional interfaith conference in Lubbock, Texas, sponsored by Texas Tech University. There's a little bit in Midland. Midland is still very on the fence with us. However, they do one day of interfaith awareness, and we try to go to those events.
Okay.
So we're making progress.
So Lubbock is more like a college city because of Texas Tech.
Right.
And so is Kenyon because of West Texas A&M. That was where I was before I came here.
Right.
And so I'm just curious because everything you're talking about, it sounds like what is really needed right now at this moment in this country.
Right.
And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about just what happened in Pittsburgh the other day. And I'm asking myself, okay, if your community was able to do that much deep introspection and go deeper and do what you called forgiveness, forgiving the beliefs that brought them to have those beliefs to be where they were before you started this initiative, why does it seem to be very difficult for other communities across America to do the same?
Well, I would say that in San Angelo, we're not perfect. And I will say that I was just telling Knox this morning, there's a book called Left to Tell, Discovering God Amidst the Rwandan Holocaust by Immaculée Ilibagiza. I read that book in 2007. I was so inspired by that book. It's all about forgiveness. And I did 25 book studies around our community, and I brought her into San Angelo. And I don't know if that kind of opened the door there were thousands of people from West Texas that came to hear her story. So I'm telling you, if you would share your stories in the communities that you're in, it will inspire people. I'm not the only one that's inspired to take action, but it's our stories that are gonna pull us together. Our synagogue got vandalized. And the whole community got together to restore the synagogue. And that's amazing. I mean, I think they would do it anyway, but I think that because so many people own the synagogue now, because we go there and worship together. I think that's because, anyway, does that answer your question? I think as people hear stories, they are inspired to take action. My daughter and I just went to Kenya and did, yeah. So we raised $17,000 to give girls in Kenya feminine products, reusable feminine products, so they could go to school. So our community, who does that? But when they heard about it, they become aware and they accept responsibility, and then they take inspired action.
So I think the question is, how generalizable is this? And I'm reminded that the move from the windowless room to the window-full room is really critical. I facilitated talks between leaders of the pro-life and pro-choice movement after fatal shootings at 2 women's health clinics in my town. And we also started in a basement, a windowless room, because of the fear that people had, both for getting together and the threats that were made for them to get together. But we also were able to bring the dialogue and the benefits of it to the light. And I think what's required are those courageous people like yourself who are willing to take the risk and help people get beyond those stereotypes and beyond those fears that really keep hope away.
Yeah. And we're kind of in that. The last book we read was very hard for the Faith Club. It's called The Common Good. And I forgot the author, I apologize, but instead of faith-based, it was politically based. And we had Republicans and Democrats around our table. It almost destroyed our Faith Club. But we made the commitment to sit through the triggers and the fear and the anger. It was amazing how much, after 10 years of sitting around a table for peace, how much this stirred within every one of us. So it took courage and it took commitment, and it was not fun. It was exhausting, but we were willing to stay the course, and we were willing to feel the feeling, and we were willing to have a dialogue.
Yes.
I've lived abroad almost my entire adult life. I'm originally from the US. You're the face of America we never see. Why don't you tell your story? Like, right now, when I hear people talk about America outside, it isn't what I know as a child. And it's so hurtful. Thank you for what you're doing. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. When I came here, I thought, why am I here? But maybe that's why they chose me to be here. I don't know, because I'm like, Podunk, San Angelo, Texas. But thank you.
Thank you, Becky. That's wonderful. I guess I will ask two related questions. The first one is, as you rightly said, it's not easy to push people, to go beyond what their core values are. And that always attracts resistance, oppression, and whatever you might call it. I've been there. In my own experience, I wanted to do something that you've been doing. But unfortunately, I was really, suffered for that. So I changed my mind. And so coming to this conference is really igniting my kind of passion again. Thank you very much. I guess my question is, what kept you moving on in spite of the resistance and the opposition to this wonderful work that you've done? And my second question is, bringing together people with different faith. I guess what kept you to keep your own distinctive uniqueness as a faith person without, let me say, I don't know how to put it, without being, influenced by other faith, or I guess you understand what I mean. Yeah, thank you very much.
Those are very good questions. What motivates me is I love people. I love people. And when I look at this audience, I don't see separate. I see the face of God in every one of you. And when we can look each other in the eye and see each other as the face, the hands, the feet of God, that gives me the power and the strength, and that love force of people is so big, I cannot not do what I do. How you stay true to your own faith tradition or your own traditions, what I have found and what everybody in our organization has found, when we study other religions and other faith belief systems, our whole consciousness expands, and it's only enhanced, and it makes my Christian tradition bigger than life when I understand Islam. You know, when I understand the difference between the great jihad and the lesser jihad, that is the internal struggle, that's the internal peace. When I understand meditation from Buddhism, that has totally exploded my faith tradition. When I understand Judaism and I go to their church, I cry because that's my ancestral roots. So it expands my faith tradition. It does not limit it. And I think everybody has experienced that. The Jews have experienced that, the Muslims. Now, it has been very courageous for our others. I mean, they've had, talk about courage, they've had a lot of courage to be publicly willing to stay the ground, especially our Muslims in San Angelo. And I take my hat off to them. We couldn't do it without them, but it takes everyday courage. We've all gotten hate mail in the mail. We've all gotten, my husband answers the phone. In the beginning, I don't get this very much anymore, but in the beginning, I was no longer allowed to answer the phone because people were not nice.
Okay. I'm getting the signal that we need to move on, so I apologize. I'm speechless, and so the way I will close this session is to just give you a hug from everybody who's sitting out there. For your